Simply what I'm suggesting here with Realize to Actualize is that we are here to learn from one another. That life's a school. Very, very simple. Very basic concept, but I think it's very, very important, very much missing in this world. Because we have just become programmed to look for something that we eventually we miss that within ourselves. Our connection to our higher self, our love, our creativity, our spontaneity and sense of imagination, which is very strongly developed already as children. But then we forget, as we become part of the rat race in life. You yourself are only too familiar with that, what happens during that process, as we become conditioned to serve the system, conditioned to look for love outside of us, to look for happiness, and to look for God. And so we forget that these things we are looking for, we already have. But basically there is a void, because there's something lacking within us, which is then that which we are looking for. Not just in terms of activities, but especially in terms of relationships. And I always thought it was curious, how we have become programmed to look for relationships without really knowing what it takes, or what is required of us in order to develop positive relationships with others. There is an art in that. There's an art in communication. Learning to understand what another person is saying without the need to argue with something you don't understand or you don't like or you don't agree with, which is secondary. Because if we only focus on what we agree with, we never learn anything new. Because then we just look for what we want. We compare other people to how we want them or need them to be. And I have come to find for myself that this is what keeps us really from developing positive relationships, because everybody's looking for something in another person. And then many times when we encounter something in another person, or we hear them, they say something or they do something that we don't approve of or agree with, or that irritates us in whatever shape or form, what usually happens, we reject that without making the effort to understand what's behind that. And it's the idea of mine versus yours and us versus them gives rise to a lot of confusion out there, because and the underlying struggle, or the overriding struggle, the competition, the production, the consumption, are we all part of this machinery in this world, the industry, the going to work, the going to school, the voting, the politics, the educational systems, the religious system. All these systems basically have enslaved us ever since the beginning of time. As slowly over millions of years our eyes were opened and we separated ourselves from animals and other life forms, we became aware of ourselves, we learned to manipulate our environment, and basically that was the beginning of the end. It was the beginning of all this warfare and all the struggle and all the suffering and all the injustice, because there were always those who were corrupted by power. Even it is a wrong, it is a misleading sense of power. The power over others and the power to control. Ultimately, it's the power to control the only person over whom you have ultimate control over, and that's yourself. So part of what I'm proposing here also is to let go of our need to control things outside of us. And it is a very difficult lesson indeed. It's not just something that I'm telling you and then just do it. And of course I'm not the first one to have said that. But what is really required here is the practice. And that is what I'm suggesting and promoting, to get engaged in that practice on a day-to-day basis. To give up your need to control things outside of you. Because when you try to control things outside of you, what you focus on is what you want, your way. And it seems that somehow that is how we have been trained in this world. To look for what we want, for things to go your way, so you will be happy. But that's not what life is here for. That's not what it's about. We're here to learn from experience. And especially the difficult experiences are here to guide us, are here to teach us, are here to provide us with what we need to know in order to give birth to ourselves, in order to become free. Because that is the freedom which we had as children. We were free. We still are free. We just have become unfree as we learn to look for answers outside of us and look for happiness and look for success. This is how we have become programmed. This is part of how the Matrix works. You might be familiar with that movie and that concept, which is the universal consciousness, which we are all part of. And there's really no escaping the Matrix. There's no escaping the conditioning, which is everywhere. Even from our parents and at school and our friends and the media, it's everywhere. Advertising. Be the way the society wants you to. Be a good producer, and then you get rewards. You can buy yourself things. And again, this is part of the consciousness that has given rise to the destruction of our planet. Because as we just are caught up in the production and consumption matrix, we forget that this planet of ours is alive. The enemy is not outside of us at all. The enemy is us. And so the message here is to make peace from within yourself.